today we're excited to have with us Joyce Seitzinger. With a background in Celtic languages and culture, expertise in technology and e-learning, and an uncanny ability to build on the experiences of others to improve systems, plus a commitment to working collaboratively, Joyce Seitzinger is an advocate for learning experience design at scale, and she's recognized as a leader and innovator in the online learning world. Joyce has worked over the years in a variety of roles: lecturer, e-learning advisor, learning experience designer, and she's worked across different types of institutions, from the corporate world in her birth country, the Netherlands, to polytechnic institutions in New Zealand, and then to more traditional university settings such as La Trobe and Deakin University in Melbourne. Today, Joyce is the newly appointed Director for Student Experience Innovation at RMIT Online in Melbourne, Australia. At RMIT, Joyce's mandate is to drive digital transformation through experience design. And today, she will draw on all of her experiences to show us how a design system can be a powerful tool for scaling the creation of digital learning experiences. In her own words, Joyce has said, "I've been part of the online education industry as it has matured. I've seen what works, I've seen what doesn't work, and I've seen the same mistakes made over and over again when learning design doesn't happen in a multidisciplinary team that combines subject matter expertise with digital pedagogy, design, and production expertise." Ladies and gentlemen, this promises to be a thought-provoking session full of practical ideas. So welcome again, do enjoy. Please remember to put your questions in the chat. But before we ask our guests to share with us, I'm going to ask the President of CAL, Professor Asha Kanwar, to make some brief remarks. Professor Kanwar.
Thank you, Meret, for that excellent start to this exciting session. And we extend a very warm welcome from a very cold Vancouver to Joyce. It's lovely to meet you, even if it's virtually. This is an area of great interest to every educator, but particularly to people from distance education. As you know, the Commonwealth of Learning promotes distance learning and the use of technologies for education and training. And right from the beginning, from the very beginning in distance education, one of the big problems has been high attrition rates, low completion rates, and people haven't really been able to have the kind of success, even if they had access to education. Now, this has been a kind of challenge, for distance educators throughout, the last 50 years. And in the beginning, some of the gurus of distance education wanted to make distance learning as learner-centric as possible. And in fact, one of the gurus, Börje Homburg, another fellow European Joyce, talked about education being, distance education being a guided didactic conversation, a kind of two-way interaction between the learner and the teacher. And this was actually, from the very beginning, part of an aspiration of distance education to make that into a good learning experience. We haven't really succeeded very well, even though what you said that, you need multidisciplinary teams. The Open University in the UK has in fact invented that several years ago, and this was the biggest contribution to the field of distance education, these multidisciplinary teams, which as you know, work well. The second thing which I think has changed from then to now is that in the beginning, when we talked about, equity and inclusion, we only talked about gender, how to integrate, because women were invisible or excluded or people were gender blind. they didn't really ensure that the learning design was also gender friendly. And those were the kinds of things in the beginning. Now, I think with a greater emphasis on persons with disabilities, uh, any kind of learning design must start with their needs and then be useful for the others as well. So I think that's the other shift which has taken place. And the third one is probably the most ubiquitous of them all, which is technology. There used to be some limited access to technologies and distance education, but now, because we've got so much access to technology, especially our learners have access to technology. And because of the diversity of learners, the learners are no longer the 18 to 24-year-olds. They could be anybody, from any age to, in fact, we had a learner for 94 years. She's a goodwill ambassador of CALL. So how do we actually cater to the needs of all these learners and make learning exciting and joyful for all of them? For the young, for the old, using technologies. What are the kind of implications of AI for, making the learning experience much better going forward? So I think after listening to you, Joyce, I hope we'll get some insights that might help trigger some thinking in our minds about where we need to go, because we are also on the cusp of developing a strategic plan for the next 6 years. And I think your inputs is going to really be very helpful.
Thank you, Asha, for your kind remarks and for your insightful comments. So hello, everyone. And thank you so much, Maret and Commonwealth of Learning, for inviting me to speak at this. And I hope that what I'm going to share today is of use to everyone at the place where they find themselves today. So by way of introduction, I would like to start off. I'm calling in from Melbourne, Australia, and at RMIT University, we hold a very strong reconciliation vision for our university and for Australia as a whole. We are committed as a university to the goal of creating an Australia that provides equal life chances for all and ensuring that everyone is treated with dignity and respect. So with that, I would like to acknowledge the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nations, on whose unceded lands we conduct the business of RMIT University. As a university, we respectfully acknowledge their ancestors and elders, past and present, and also the all-important future. RMIT also acknowledges the traditional custodians and their ancestors of the lands and waters across Australia where we conduct our business, and also out to you beyond Australia. So with that, I would like to get stuck into the things that I want to share with everyone. So what I found myself with a few years ago is a familiar problem. A problem that many of you a few years ago would have probably been struggling with as well, but which I know that in this pandemic world, and even for those of us who currently are coming out of lockdown in the post-pandemic world, will be increasingly familiar to you as well. I am sharing here a picture of our office, one of our workshops back in our office. I don't know whether you know, Melbourne is just coming out of one of the world's longest lockdowns. We've been 111 days in our house. So I thought, we're a little bit of nostalgia. I would show how we used to run these workshops that are a very integral part of our learning design. But also take this opportunity to tell you a little bit of background about the situation that I found myself in 4 years ago. So RMIT University is one of the largest universities in Australia. We have about 90,000 students. 4 years ago, it decided, and most of that, we are based in the heart of Melbourne. We are in the city centre. All of our buildings are dotted around that. We are part of the very fabric of Melbourne, and so our on-campus life is very vibrant. But 4 years ago, RMIT decided to create a separate entity called RMIT Online in order to start to create a center of expertise around fully online learning. And when I joined back in 2016, around this time of year, there was about 12 of us. It was very new. We had just signed on a new partner that we were going to be developing and delivering courses with. We had about 6 programs that needed to be developed. They had all just developed their very first course, with many more to be developed. And I was the only kind of learning design expert on the ground. So it was a bit of a big ask. At the time, we would have had about 60 students for each intake, and we did about 6 intakes each year. By comparison, I will tell you that in this time from between then and now, and with an absolute COVID surge this year, we are looking in teaching period 6, which is about to start, to go from the 60 students per intake that we had in 2016 to 2,000 students per intake. And now we don't have 6 intakes per year, we have 37 intakes across all of our portfolios. So it's been an absolutely massive shift for us over the last 4 years. And what I'm going to share with you is some of the work that I've done in order to scale the learning design that we needed to do in order to create all of those new courses, but also in a way to fit them into the ecosystem that RMIT Online exists in. Because despite the fact that we've been growing for the last 4 years, not all of the work that we do is actually done in-house. In order to scale fast, we have developed an extensive partnerships, which we found absolutely essential to being able to grow this fast, but also to give us the flexibility to deliver the kind of quality that we want for our students. To give you an idea about how complex our partner ecosystem is, basically across all of RMIT Online, we have several different types of portfolios. We go from having courses that are your traditional, like 12-week semester courses, to courses that we have developed in-house that are slightly shorter. They go for 10 weeks, and they're very targeted, all focused on the future of work. And then we also have our accelerated courses, which run for 6 weeks. Now, during these 10 and 6-week portfolios, students still complete the normal amount of learning hours that they would. So this is very much a higher education approach to teaching and learning, which you might all be familiar with, the semester-based courses, but this accelerated model of students being expected to do 20 hours of learning each week for 6 weeks can be really, really intense. Across all of these different, and then one of the other portfolios that you'd probably be interested in hearing about is our short course portfolio, which is not accredited, but those courses tend to run for 6 weeks as well, but the students only study about 5 to 7 hours a week. But across all of these portfolios, we work with lots of different partners for lots of different services that we work together with them on. So we have different partners for student acquisition, we have different partners for subject matter expertise, we have different partners for course build, and that will be one of the focuses for today, and we have different partners for teaching and delivery. And just to give you a very quick overview of some of the courses that we have, you can see that it's a wide variety, but increasingly we are really focused towards the future of work and being able to make sure that people are ready for the future of work, and that our mission is to build a community of lifelong learners successfully navigating the world of work. And to us, that means that people need to be ready for what is coming their way. And to give you an idea about some of the complexity of that across these different ones, these different types of courses, you can see that we have different numbers of course runs each year. Our short courses run 20 times each year. Our postgrad accelerated runs 6 times each year. Our undergrad and postgrad online run 7 times a year. So you can see how all of these intakes and all of these different formats actually start to create an increasing amount of complexity, different number of learning hours, and different build processes as well. Our short courses, we try to build within 8 to 10 weeks. Our postgrad accelerated gets 16 weeks, as do all of our other accredited courses. And it's increasingly growing more complex. So we've gone from having 3 build partners to having 8 build partners. We've gone from having 4 portfolios to this year having 5, and increasingly doing more bespoke work as well. And we've gone from having discipline expertise partners. And in this week, include our academic staff at RMIT University, as well as the many industry partners that we work with. We've gone from having initially about 10 different schools that we work with to now having many different schools at the university, as well as many of these industry partners who work with us, like Salesforce, Amazon, Apple, all partners with RMIT Online, and have all generously given us subject matters that would be involved in our multidisciplinary teams that build our courses. And of course, when you involve that many people in the design, development, and delivery of online courses, you very quickly hit a very knotty problem. And that is, how do you design a chair? Or rather, how do you design a course? What you see here is the Charles Eames chair, which is considered one of the epitomes of furniture design. But Charles Eames designed many, many things, and his idea was that design is a plan for arranging elements in such a way as best to accomplish a particular purpose. And the problem is that when it comes to course design, quite often learning designers have been in a support function where they would support academic staff in order to bring their vision to life. And what that means is that quite often courses get designed according to the wishes of that subject matter expert, but the courses don't necessarily get designed to actually be able to plug into a larger system. And so you get lots of courses which are individually of really high quality, but as an entity, perhaps don't make too much sense together. And that can lead to many different issues, like when somebody leaves, who understands why that course was built that way? When you want to do quality control, if all the courses are a different size and shape, how do you do the quality control on them? When you want to refresh courses, you need to almost do like a bespoke refresh design. One of the other things that we really struggled with in terms of starting to work together with other learning design partners is that everybody has a different language around learning design. Some people use activities, some people talk about content, some people talk about learning steps. Some of the other things were around, having different concepts about what good learning design is, what a good pedagogy is. And so you end up thinking that you're on the same page with build partners or all of the people in your multidisciplinary team. And then it turns out that, you find out quite late in the process that that's not actually the case. And so in order to start solving this problem, knowing that we were going to have this growing partner ecosystem who would all be involved in the building of amazing learning experiences for our students, we decided that that was the big thing that we would chew off. And the reason that I think that this might be useful to people now is particularly during this pandemic and looking forward towards a post-pandemic world, is that we're going to have to be ready in order to do more online learning or more blended learning. And so many people are currently finding themselves in the place where they suddenly have to build a lot of courses for a consistent quality, or lead on the production of a lot of courses of a consistent quality. And that's why I wanted to share the work that we've done around building a design system in order to help smooth out those quality issues. So a little bit about design systems, and I'd like to start here with thinking that those of us who have traditionally perhaps been lone operators working as a learning designer alongside an academic staff member or alongside another type of subject matter expert are now finding ourselves suddenly thrust into leadership positions. And one of the things that I've found really helpful is to follow the Management 3.0 leadership system, which you can find online. They're a very extensive organization, but what I really like about their approach to leadership is that they redefine it into managing the system and not the people. So rather than trying to convince everyone that, this is a particularly good pedagogy, or this is a particularly robust way of designing a course, what you actually do is you just build the system, and then everyone who comes into the system works within the system. So I found that a really helpful way in order to, again, increase the clarity across the ecosystem for anyone who's coming in. So if a new academic staff member has just started at RMIT University and they come into to build their very first course with us, we have onboarding materials, we have a training system, we have a way of conducting our very first intake session with them, and very quickly we try to get them to become a part of the system. And there have long been calls for formalizing how we actually design for learning. Two of the authors and thinkers in this space that I absolutely adore are Professor Peter Goodyear and Professor Diane Laurillard. Peter has long been beating the drum about, us focusing more on the qualities of designing for learning and really seeing the design for learning as separate from the delivery of learning. That design shouldn't happen in the moment, that we should know what that experience is going to be before the student ever touches that experience. And Diane, of course, wrote a fantastic book called Teaching as a Design Science, Building Pedagogical Patterns. And it's kind of that what we're trying to do with our learning design system. We are really trying to build predictable pedagogical patterns that we know are going to lead to quality outcomes for our students. Now, going into the idea of design systems, because this is very unusual to be building a design system inside a university or inside education. Design systems are very common in like marketing and other types of organizations, but in higher ed, I would say they are still quite nascent. So if you wanted to get a little bit of background about what design systems are, there is a fantastic open source design systems handbook in which they talk about, like the benefits of a design system and kind of what they really are. At its heart, it's basically a collection of reusable components guided by clear standards that can be assembled together to build any number of applications. I think the thing they leave out there is that it's really about enabling a multidisciplinary team who may not have a shared understanding about the product that they are building to come together and use those components in order to build that product. And what it does is it basically makes design reusable. It means that, and the reusability of it is what makes the scale possible. If every single course is a bespoke design, it will take much more effort. It will take much more negotiation. It will take a lot more communication. It will take a lot more collaboration. Whereas if you have a set of standards guiding the way that you will work together and the way that the product that you're developing, that particular course, is going to plug in to the wider education platform that you're building, then you can focus on the high value things and not have to renegotiate the low value things because those have already been agreed. So you can focus on the high value elements rather than focusing on the low value elements. So if you're thinking about design systems and you want to see some examples of what they are, like I said, not very common in higher ed yet, or across education and training, but very common in companies that are used to building digital experiences. So for instance, this is one of the unicorns coming out of Australia, a company called Atlassian, who've built a suite of collaboration software. They're very open. They've actually shared their design system online if you wanted to get a sense of what it looks like when it's really mature and highly advanced. This is one of the things that's my dream for this year, is for us to actually be able to publish our design system in such an open system as well. This is the Atlassian design system, and you can see that they basically share design principles, their brand, their illustrations. Another example would be a company that we used to all love, but that's probably struggling a little bit in the current climate, is Airbnb. Again, very open about how they approach design. You can go in, you can read all of their articles, you can see how they actually use their design system. One of the ones that's probably closer, that I see as aligning more closely to the work that we do at RMIT Online, is the BBC, who have to commission a lot of content from other producers. They outsource, they don't make all of their programs in-house. They outsource their programs. They get created by independent companies, production companies that build their things. But when you watch it, it still feels like a BBC program. It still has the hallmarks and the quality of a BBC program. And that's really where the design system is. That's where you see the design system at work. Your student isn't going to know whether learning designer A or a particular student, RMIT Online student, isn't going to know whether learning designer A or learning designer B design their course. They can be confident that from course to course, the experience and the quality is going to be consistent. So that's where I see us having more synergies with, a content commissioner like the BBC, who is trying to, deliver high value quality experiences. So as I said, in learning and education, this is still in its infancy. I would really recommend this book by Alla Kolmatova, who led on the Future Learn design system. I'm sure most people would be familiar with the Future Learn platform. And what she says is that without a shared design language and practices, collaboration is really difficult. And that's how they approach this at Future Learn as well. So creating consistency in the experience is like making small promises throughout the interface. When people can be confident what will happen, they can rely on the product. So it's also a sense of like providing confidence to your students as well. If you always can provide the same experience, if students can know what to expect, they don't need to spend cognitive load trying to figure out what the format for this course is, what the approach for this course is, because they are already familiar with it. So thinking on all of those principles, we decided to build our own learning design system. We called it ABLE, which stands for Activity-Based Learning Experiences. It is basically, we have taken, you alluded to the excellent work done at the Open University, Asha, earlier, and that's exactly, and it'll be no surprise that Belinda Tynan suggested that we look at some of the research coming out of the Open University, which was done by Bart Rienties around doing the analysis of the learning design across all of their courses. And what they found was that when students were engaged and when the learning design called for more active tasks, then the students actually perform better. They may not like the course as much, but their eventual learning success is actually higher. And so what we did is, so they did an analysis of their courses after they had been designed, and we said, well, what if we took those same principles, but we actually put them in at the forefront, and we actually make it part of how we design courses. And so all of our courses are basically a sequence of learning activities. Every single learning activity has constructive alignment, is directly aligned to assessments. Each learning activity is basically a combination of little learning tasks, but together they get a student to meet a certain objective. And that is measured by one task, which is like a performance task, and that should give students an indication of their progress. So ABLE, that's how ABLE was born, activity-based learning experiences. And it really helps to give your design system a name. Now everybody talks, like we have some legacy courses and people talk about, oh, this course still needs to be ableified. So it really helps to have that shared language and for everyone to just understand. So we started off by just setting out some very basic principles. You don't need to take a screenshot of this slide because there is nothing groundbreaking here. This is really just basic principles of good learning design for online learning. But that's kind of where we started. And then having those, they became like a foundational layer for the rest of the design system. So basically we use our learning activities as pedagogical building blocks. Each activity has an activity objective. We highlight 6 different task types: assimilative, experiential, interactive, productive, social, and metacognitive. What you'll find there is this is actually where we really drew on the Open University findings in terms of, and this goes even against the grain of what students really expect when they do online learning. The assimilative task is basically the information transfer. It's putting the content up for the students to passively, observe or passively experience. So this could be readings, this could be videos that they watch, this could be podcasts that they listen to. You'll notice that only one of our task type is like that. All of the others are focused on active learning. You need to, have an experience. You need to interact with something. You need to produce something yourself. You need to discuss what you found or interact with your peers in order to find it, or you need to reflect on your own learning and your own progress. So this is really where we drew on that research that said, students, yes, they might want passive content. They may ask for it all the time. They may be disappointed that there aren't more lectures in the course. But in fact, that is actually what will eventually lead to them being less successful in their learning outcomes. And so what we've done is we've basically said, knowing that our fully online students are also time poor, they often have families, they often are in work, we wanted to make sure that every single one of the activities that we design across all of our courses, and this year we built 124, so 124 courses, each of about 120 hours. So you can imagine how many learning hours we are producing. We wanted to make sure that all of those activities are actually time boxed to fit into study pockets. So what we try to do is never to have a learning activity that is longer than 2 hours or 2.5 hours. So these types of principles and these types of standards that you start to set for your learning design system are exactly the kind of things that usually are left really open-ended. If I design a learning activity and another learning designer designs an activity, I might design one that's 45 minutes because I think that's an appropriate length. Somebody else might design one that's 4 hours and think that that's an appropriate length. But if you want to bring that consistency of experience for your students so that the students know what to expect and they can plan their study time accordingly, you want to start setting some of those types of standards and guidance in place. So based on these activity, we actually then started to design what we call course recipes. So this is an example of a course recipe for one of our courses. And it basically sets out how many activities per week we expect our learning design partners to design for. And so this is our learning design partners, I mean, the actual learning designers, the academic staff that we work with, multimedia people who are part of the multidisciplinary team, etc. But we basically kind of set out like, what is the pattern going to be for this course? You can see that the white course in the white blocks in week 1, that's usually like a hook week. It's basically an introduction week. You get to know everyone, you get more familiar with how the course is going to run. But then after that, those yellow blocks actually start, those yellow activities actually start to get students ready to be ready for assessment 1. And you'll notice that in week 4, we actually put a little fewer learning activities in because we know the students are going to need that extra time in order to work on the assessment. So we don't overload students either. And this is probably the other benefit of starting to use a design system and things like course recipes, because the absolute draw of an online course or a hybrid course is that, the space is flexible. You can put as much content in as you like. And very often the courses actually get overstuffed with contents and students don't even know which bits to focus on because it's not clear which bits are essential to their learning and which bits are nice to have. here's an example of what that looks like when one of our learning design partners or one of our learning design teams have actually worked on starting to map out what those learning activities are going to be. And this is one of the first things that we do when we start building a course, is to actually build this course architecture. And we have particular workshops that we run. Those workshops go through a set of workshop activities in order across 3 workshops to actually be able to deliver something like this. And then the next bit is to actually start to dig deeper, and from each activity actually start to list out underneath it what the individual tasks are that students are going to do. And this would be, again, the point where we would start to check, have you got too many assimilative tasks in? Is this too much just content transfer and not enough application of learning? So because we set out those standards about how we expect those learning activities to be designed, we can actually then have the conversation with the learning design team that have worked on this particular course. So some of the elements of ABLE, and it is continually growing and evolving as we've been using it, and not just through what the things that we say, but also through the things that our partners or our academic staff say. It would be really useful if we had some guidance around a type of video and what they are good for. It would be great if we knew what podcasts are good for, when we should use them, when we should not use them. So for all of those things, when requests come in, we can actually start to evolve it and create even more clarity across that complex ecosystem. But some of the things that are currently in it would be things like guidelines around learning experience design, assessment, writing, building, visual design. We have templates with course maps, assessments, storyboards, learning activities, and visual design. We have very stringent processes about how we expect the teams to work together. And then increasingly, making sure that we have lots of examples, basically a library of examples that people can choose from to be inspired by. And then we also have extensive training. So we've developed an online onboarding course for everyone who becomes a learning designer in our ecosystem. We also, because of the way that we're working now and the way that we're doing quality control, we are able to start to see which teams or which schools or which portfolios might be, weak in some area. So if we notice, like, in this particular program, we're always getting feedback about assessments, then we can actually initiate like some bespoke training and start to do course refreshes that focus and offer training to people specifically on how we might make the assessments in that particular program more authentic across the board. Now, having a common space with teaching and learning resources that give people all of this brilliant advice is not uncommon. So that's not actually where the magic of having a design system is. The magic of having a design system is when the design system actually becomes just the way things get done. And that's where your process really comes in. So to us, there isn't a single course that doesn't go through the same process and therefore actually uses all of the elements of ABLE. Every single course goes through the same 4 stage gates of having to develop a course map, and that course map needs to follow ABLE standards and elements, then a prototype, then a mid-course check-in, and then a final check. And so the trick of rolling out a design system is that you have to make it part of just how the sausage gets made. So what has ABLE enabled for us? The fact that we have course recipes and that our courses follow a particular recipe have allowed our teaching and learning team to design training and onboarding programs that prepare every one of our 1,000+ teachers that we've onboarded this year to understand our courses and be able to need little retraining when they've taught course A and they get ready to teach course B, because they know that the experience is going to be very similar, that the assessments are going to happen in the same week, that the activities will be of a similar length. They know exactly where to find everything. So you're not just making things easier for your students, you're also making things easier for the people who are actually going to be teaching the courses. And in fact, as I was thinking about this and I was listening to you speak, I thought, you know, this should actually be like a dual presentation, because you really need our teaching and learning director, Kylie, to come and talk to you about how we've built that particular engine and the system around that. We have a shared understanding of what a quality learning experience now is across a network of 500 plus learning designers, subject matter experts, and university staff. We have a shared language and design practice across that network as well. And we can deliver consistent quality learning experiences for our 20,000 plus students. And how do we know that we're being effective? Course development timelines have diminished from 28 weeks to 16. We have more reliable quality now at those 4 quality stage gates. Our internal learning design teams spend 40% less of their time on course projects, and we have improved pass rates, and our students actually tell us that they like it as well. What you see here is a new measure that we've rolled out called our course design satisfaction score, which gets asked about in every single one of our courses, every single time it runs. In 2017, you can see it was really low. And then as we started to introduce elements of ABLE, you can see that the consistency and the quality goes up, and the students certainly experience that as well.
Thank you, Joyce, for that. I'm going to ask my colleague, Dr. Naveed Malik, to sign us out.
Said, thank you so much for the course recipes. There are a lot to digest, pun intended. But with the world in turmoil, we have seen the demand for online learning surge, but experiences of new inductees into this new world of teaching and learning have not been uniformly positive. And this is also reflected in some of the questions that have come up. Other than capacity issues, a fundamental issue is one of the overall learning experience. And good design goes a long way in alleviating many of the issues faced by novices in the field. Joyce, your experience and passion about delivering great student experiences at scale through using the concept of design systems in complex multi-partner environments could not have come at a better time. So thank you for a very thought-provoking and timely talk and an in-depth view of the ABLE design process and the efficiency it has brought to the course development processes. I would also like to thank our Open Door partners, coalition that is not only enabling this series of webinars, but is also allowing for a free exchange of ideas and innovations in the field. We have had attendees from many countries joining us for this webinar, so I would like to thank them for attending and participating in a fruitful question-answer session that highlighted some important issues. Last but not least, I would like to thank the team here at the Commonwealth of Learning, Dr. Marit Newman for organizing this webinar and her handling of the entire question-answer session. Dr. Sanjaya Misra was really the driving force behind the Open Door effort and the coalition for assisting and organizing, along with Najil Isaki for scheduling the entire webinar and managing the technical aspects. I would also like to thank Professor Asha Kambar, President and CEO of the Commonwealth of Learning, for her opening remarks and for providing the guiding vision for Open Door. This brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you and goodbye.